I never thought my life would spiral into chaos while I was busy helping others. My name is Mark, and for the past 3 years, I dedicated myself to developing telehealth services for rural communities. I poured my heart into a project that connected people with health resources they could trust, something vital in areas where access was limited. Little did I know that distance wasn't the only thing that would breed dishonesty. It all began to unravel when I noticed subtle changes in Emily, my wife. At first, they were small. She'd come home late from work. Her phone would ring and she'd step outside to answer it, and her stories about her day began to feel rehearsed. Emily had always been the life of the party, charming and social, but lately she seemed distant. I chalked it up to stress from her job as a marketing manager, but my gut was telling me something was off. The first major sign came one evening when I returned from a long day of meetings. I found Emily sitting on our couch, scrolling through her phone with a slight smirk on her face. I asked her what was so funny, and she brushed me off, saying it was just a meme. I tried to laugh it off, but I noticed she quickly locked her phone and changed the subject. It stung a little, but I wanted to be supportive, so I didn't press her. Then there was that random Saturday when I decided to surprise her with dinner. I left work early, headed to the store, and picked up her favorite wine and some fresh ingredients for a homemade meal. When I walked into the house, the air felt different. It was heavier. I noticed her car wasn't in the driveway, and while that alone wouldn't have sent alarm bells ringing, the nagging feeling in my stomach only grew stronger. As luck would have it, just as I was setting the table, my phone buzzed. It was an email notification from a shared photo storage account. I thought it was odd since I hadn't uploaded anything recently. Out of curiosity, I opened it, and there it was, a photo of Emily, arms wrapped around another man, both of them beaming like they were the only two people in the world. They were at a beach, and the guy had his face pressed against hers. Kissing her on the cheek, I froze. My heart raced and I felt a sickening twist in my stomach. The image felt like a slap in the face. My mind raced through every moment I thought we were solid, and it all shattered in an instant. I couldn't believe it. This was the woman I had trusted, the person I thought I knew inside and out. I felt anger bubble up inside me, mixed with disbelief and betrayal. I decided right then and there I had to confront her. As I paced the living room, the weight of that photo felt like an anchor pulling me down. I was furious and heartbroken all at once. I wondered how long this had been going on, who this guy was, and why she felt the need to betray me. When Emily finally walked through the door, I could hardly contain myself. I confronted her right away, my voice shaking but firm. I held the photo in front of her, demanding answers. I expected her to be shocked, maybe even to plead for forgiveness, but instead I was met with a blank stare. "What is this, Emily?" I asked, my heart pounding. She looked at the photo, and for a moment she seemed genuinely confused. Then she recovered quickly, her facade slipping back into place. "It's not what it looks like, Mark," she said, her tone shifting to defensive. "That was just a friend, we were having some fun." "Fun?" I shot back, incredulous. "Maybe you should have thought about that fun before you committed to a marriage." She started to stutter, trying to come up with excuses. "You don't understand. I've been feeling so alone with you working all the time. I just needed someone to talk to, and it spiraled out of control." The anger I felt began to curdle into something else: sadness, despair, and disbelief. I'd sacrificed so much for our life together, and here she was, justifying her betrayal with excuses. As she continued to ramble about her supposed loneliness and how it led to this, I felt a profound emptiness. The confrontation left me feeling hollow. I never thought I'd be in this position, feeling so betrayed by someone who claimed to love me. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving behind a chilling realization. The woman I thought I knew was gone. Now I needed to figure out what to do next. This was beyond infidelity. It was a deep breach of trust, and I was standing at a crossroads in my life, unsure of which path to take. The night dragged on after that confrontation. Emily continued to throw excuses at me like they were confetti, but I could hardly hear her over the pounding in my head. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to make sense of the senseless betrayal. Instead, I felt a numbness settle over me. It was surreal. I was watching my life unfold as if I was a spectator, completely detached from the emotions swirling inside me. When I finally got to bed, I was too wired to sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows of the room heavy with unspoken words. I could hear Emily moving about, her quiet attempts to appear normal somehow making it worse. I wanted to scream at her, to let her know how deeply she had cut me, but I was too lost in my own thoughts. I replayed her words over and over, trying to find some truth in them, but all I felt was anger. The next morning, I woke up groggy and still reeling from the previous night. Emily was already up and at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. I wanted to confront her again, to dig deeper into the mess we had found ourselves in, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I decided to throw myself into work. I spent the next few days in a haze, burying myself in the telehealth project. It was my distraction of choice. It allowed me to focus on something that mattered, something I had poured my heart into. I worked longer hours, meeting with doctors and community leaders, pressing ahead with the initiative that had once filled me with pride. But no matter how hard I tried to immerse myself in the work, the pain of Emily's betrayal lingered. Eventually, I couldn't avoid the confrontation forever. I needed to know who this guy was, what their relationship had been, and how long this affair had been going on. I had a sinking feeling in my gut, a mix of dread and anticipation. I couldn't let her control the narrative any longer. One evening, as we sat silently in the living room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife, I turned to her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Emily looked up and met my gaze, her expression a mix of defiance and apprehension. "What more is there to say, Mark? I already told you it was a mistake and I regret it." "But that's just it, isn't it?" I pressed. "You regret getting caught, not the affair itself." "I need to know how deep this goes." She hesitated, and for a moment I thought she might actually come clean. "It was just a fling," she finally said, looking away. "I was lonely and he was just there. It didn't mean anything." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Just a fling?" I echoed incredulously. "Do you really think that makes it better? What was his name?" She bit her lip, clearly conflicted. "David," she finally admitted, looking away as if ashamed. "He works at the marketing firm. We met at a conference last year and it just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I clenched my fists, feeling a surge of rage. "You didn't mean for it to go this far? What does that even mean? You made a choice every single time you saw him. This wasn't an accident, Emily." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I almost felt pity. But then the anger surged back, hot and fierce. "What's the point of crying now? You made your choice. And I'm sitting here wondering why I should care about your feelings when you clearly didn't care about mine." "I know I messed up," she said, finally breaking down. "But we can fix this, can't we? I love you, Mark." The words felt hollow, as if they had been rehearsed. "Love? You call this love? You don't just throw away a decade together for a fling and then ask for forgiveness like it's that easy." As we went back and forth, the emotional toll was exhausting. I felt drained, caught in a whirlwind of pain and anger. A part of me wanted to forgive her, to believe that we could somehow salvage our marriage. But another part of me screamed that I deserved better than a half-hearted apology. That night I was at a crossroads. I spent hours scrolling through social media, trying to find any trace of David, trying to piece together what their relationship had been like. The more I found, the more it confirmed my worst thoughts. Pictures of them laughing together, snapshots that would never be forgotten. I felt sick to my stomach. The emotional impact was overwhelming. I was consumed with sadness, the kind that felt deep and raw. It gnawed at me like a relentless ache, and I couldn't escape it. I started to realize that I was angry not just at Emily but at myself for trusting her, for believing in our love so completely. In the days that followed, I moved through life like a ghost. I went to work but felt disconnected. Friends reached out, concerned about my well-being, but all I wanted was to be alone with my thoughts. I started second-guessing everything: our shared life, the memories we made together, and the love I had poured into our marriage. I knew I had to make a decision, but the thought of it terrified me. Could I forgive her? Could I rebuild our relationship after such a breach of trust? The idea of facing that choice loomed over me, suffocating and heavy, as I fought to figure out the next steps in my life. As days turned into weeks, my emotional state fluctuated like a pendulum swinging between rage and sorrow. The initial shock of discovery faded, replaced by a dull ache of betrayal that seemed to seep into every corner of my life. I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew about Emily and the life we had built together. It felt as if the very foundation of my existence had been shaken to its core, leaving me unsteady and lost. I avoided conversations with friends and family, not wanting to share the details of my crumbling marriage. They had always admired our relationship, often citing us as a model couple. To admit that everything was falling apart felt like admitting failure. Instead, I focused on work, burying myself in projects and deadlines, convincing myself that if I could just stay busy enough, I wouldn't have to confront the reality of my situation. During this time, Emily tried to make amends, but her attempts felt forced and rehearsed. She would leave me notes, send texts filled with heartfelt apologies, and even suggested couples therapy, but my heart was heavy with doubt. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again, let alone share the same space comfortably. Her presence became a constant reminder of the betrayal, and I felt suffocated in our shared home. One evening, as I returned home from work, I noticed her sitting at the dining table with her head buried in her hands. The sight tugged at my heartstrings, and a flicker of sympathy shot through me. But as soon as I walked through the door, the familiarity of that feeling was eclipsed by the anger that still simmered beneath the surface. "Mark," she said, looking up with tear-stained cheeks, "can we talk? I feel like we're just drifting further apart." "Drifting?" I snapped, my voice rising. "I think you mean more like you're trying to put this mess behind us while I'm still here in the wreckage you left behind." She flinched at the harshness of my words, and for a moment I saw the hurt flicker in her eyes. I almost felt guilty, but the outrage buried deep inside me demanded an outlet. "You think we can just sweep this under the rug and carry on like nothing happened? I can't just forget that you've betrayed me, Emily." "I know it's not that simple," she pleaded. "I messed up and I'm so sorry. I want to work through this. I love you. I need you to believe that." The anger in my chest flared again, but I didn't let it explode. Instead, I took a deep breath. "Say you love me, but love doesn't lead someone to cheat. You've shattered my trust, and I don't know if I can rebuild it." "Then let's try," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "Let's go to therapy, talk it through. I promise I'll do whatever it takes." I considered her offer. Part of me was willing to explore the possibility of healing, but another part was terrified of diving back into those emotional waters. What if I opened myself up to her again only to be hurt once more? It felt like a gamble I wasn't sure I wanted to take. I agreed to therapy, but I did so reluctantly. We found a marriage counselor who specialized in infidelity, which made me feel even more vulnerable. The first session was awkward. I sat there, arms crossed, as Emily expressed her regret and her desire to rebuild our relationship. I felt like a spectator in my own life, listening to her recount the events that had led to this moment. The counselor guided us through our feelings and frustrations, helping us articulate the pain we both felt. Emily cried openly, and while a small part of me felt empathy, most of me was still wrapped in a protective barrier. I remained guarded, struggling to articulate how deeply the affair had affected me. As the sessions progressed, I began to reveal more of my feelings, the anger, the betrayal, the sadness. It was cathartic to speak openly, but it often felt like I was merely scratching the surface. Each session left me emotionally drained, and I often returned home with a mind racing from the conversation, replaying every word over and over. During one particular session, we discussed the loneliness Emily had felt, which she claimed had driven her to seek comfort in David. The words hung heavy in the air, and I couldn't help but feel a spark of rage. "You think you were lonely? I was working my ass off to provide for us. I thought we were building a life together." During therapy, Emily finally admitted that she had felt neglected because of my focus on work. "I thought you didn't care anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "You were so wrapped up in your projects, I felt like I was on my own." At that moment, something inside me snapped. I felt as if I were watching the walls we had built together slowly begin to crumble. Neglected or not, that doesn't justify what you did. You could have told me you were struggling. You could have communicated. The therapist intervened, urging us to dig deeper into the root of our issues. The sessions became a battleground where I struggled to find common ground with Emily while still protecting my heart. As the weeks passed, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I was angry at her, angry at myself for even considering reconciliation, and oddly enough, even angry at the situation that had led us here. I missed the simplicity of our life before the betrayal, nights spent laughing over dinner, lazy Sundays wrapped in blankets, the comfort of a life shared without secrets. Despite the chaos, I began to realize that while I could choose to forgive Emily, it wouldn't erase the scars left behind. The journey toward acceptance would take time, and I was unsure if I even wanted to take that journey. One night, after a particularly intense therapy session, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, consumed by the weight of uncertainty. Should I continue down this path of trying to fix what had been broken, or should I start fresh, detach myself from the pain, and let go of the life we had built? The choices loomed over me, and I found myself at yet another crossroads. The next few weeks passed in a blur, and I found myself caught between the effort to rebuild and the undeniable urge to walk away. Emily continued to throw herself into our therapy sessions, desperate for a chance to prove herself and win back my trust. I could see her trying, and part of me wanted to believe that she was sincere. But another part of me, the part that had been pierced by betrayal, remained skeptical. After each session, I'd come home feeling emotionally drained, often resorting to late-night stints in front of the television, trying to escape the discomfort of my feelings. I'd sink into the couch, staring blankly at whatever was on, my mind racing with thoughts of what had transpired between us. The weight of our situation pressed heavily on my chest, constricting my ability to breathe freely. One evening, as I sat there in silence, I heard the sound of Emily's footsteps approaching. She came into the living room and sat down beside me. "Mark, can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft and cautious. "About what?" I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "About the progress we've made. I think things are improving, don't you?" I turned to look at her. "Improving, maybe, but it still doesn't change what you did." "I know that," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I just want you to see that I'm committed to making this work. I don't want to lose you." As she spoke, I felt a twinge of empathy. I had seen glimpses of the old Emily, the one who would laugh and joke with me over dinner, but those moments were few and far between. I wanted to believe her words, but the scars were still fresh, and trust was not something easily rebuilt. "Look, I appreciate that you're trying, but the emotional wreckage isn't just going to disappear overnight," I said, my voice firmer now. "I need time to process everything. You can't rush this." "I understand," she said softly, looking down at her hands. "I just feel so helpless sometimes, like I've lost you already. I'm still here, but you need to understand that I'm not the same person I was a few months ago. You've changed everything," I replied, my heart heavy. That night, I couldn't shake the unease settling in my gut. I was living a life that felt increasingly foreign to me, a life that had been poisoned by betrayal. The thought of what we once had felt like a fleeting memory, a beautiful dream that had turned into a nightmare. In our next therapy session, the counselor suggested we establish boundaries and set goals to help rebuild our relationship. As we discussed what that would look like, I felt Emily's hope radiating off her in waves. She was eager to do the work, but I remained guarded. It felt like walking a tightrope, balancing between hope and doubt. During one session, I finally admitted how deeply the affair had affected my self-esteem. "I've been questioning my worth," I said, my voice trembling as I spoke. "Did I not give you enough? Was I not enough?" Emily's expression shifted from one of hope to one of guilt. "Mark, that's not true. The affair was about my own shortcomings, not yours. You've always been more than enough for me." Her reassurance felt like a balm, but it was laced with uncertainty. "It's hard to believe that when I see the happy memories of you and David splattered across social media," I replied, frustration creeping into my voice. The counselor encouraged us to address those feelings directly, and while it felt cathartic, it also brought a fresh wave of anger. As the conversation unfolded, I began to realize how deeply the affair had cut me. It was not just about the act itself, but about how it had shattered my sense of identity. After several weeks of therapy, I reached a point where I needed to take a step back, if only for my own mental health. I suggested to Emily that I spend a weekend away, giving myself time to reflect on what I truly wanted. She looked worried, but I insisted it was necessary. I promised to check in with her regularly, but I needed the space to breathe without her constant presence reminding me of our broken past. I headed to a small cabin in the woods, a place I had visited for years, one where I could disconnect from the noise of my life. As I settled in, the serenity of the surroundings enveloped me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sliver of peace. The calmness of the forest contrasted sharply with the chaos of my emotions, and I welcomed the quiet as it wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. I spent the days hiking, journaling, and reflecting on the life I wanted to lead. Thoughts of Emily and the affair drifted in and out of my mind, but I focused on what I needed for myself. I wrote down my feelings, the pain, the anger, the moments of anger I felt toward both her and myself. With each word, I felt a sense of release, like I was slowly shedding layers of the hurt that had weighed me down. At night, I'd sit on the porch with a glass of whiskey, watching the stars twinkle above as I pondered my future. I questioned whether I could ever forgive Emily, whether I even wanted to. The love I had for her still flickered inside me, but it felt fragile, like a candle flickering in a strong wind. As the weekend drew to a close, I felt a sense of clarity emerging from the chaos. I knew I had a decision to make. I could either continue to fight for a relationship that felt irrevocably changed or choose to walk away and start anew. When I returned home, I was met with Emily's worried gaze. She had spent the weekend anxiously waiting for my text updates, and her relief was palpable as I walked through the door. But as I stepped into our home, I felt the weight of my choice hanging heavily over me. "Hey, how was your time away?" she asked. Her voice laced with hope. "It was good. I did a lot of thinking," I replied, my heart pounding as I prepared to lay out my thoughts. Emily's eyes widened, and I could see the anticipation etched on her face. I took a deep breath and prepared to reveal the direction I intended to take, knowing it would shape everything moving forward. As I stood there facing Emily, the weight of my decision pressed heavily on my chest. I had taken the weekend to search my soul and confront my feelings about our relationship, and now it was time to lay everything out on the table. I could see the hope in her eyes, but I also recognized the fear that flickered across her face. "Emily," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about us, about what happened and where we go from here." She nodded, her eyes wide with anticipation. "I'm ready to hear it, Mark. Whatever it is, I'm ready." "I'm glad you're willing to listen," I continued. "I think it's important for both of us to be honest, especially now." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "You know how much I love you, but the truth is I'm still hurting. I'm still trying to reconcile the person I thought you were with the person who chose to betray our vows." Her expression shifted from anticipation to worry, and I could see her bracing herself for what was to come. "I know I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make it right." "I know you're trying," I said, "and I appreciate that. But trying isn't enough for me right now. I need to be honest with myself and with you. I can't pretend that everything is okay, and I can't ignore the fact that your actions have changed things between us forever." "I understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I want to prove to you that I can change, that I can be the partner you need me to be." "Maybe," I said, "but I need to focus on myself first. I've realized that I can't build a relationship on a shaky foundation of trust. I need time to heal, time to figure out what I want and what's best for me." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Emily's eyes brimmed with tears as she processed my words. I saw her lower her head, a mix of despair and understanding washing over her. "Are you saying you want to separate?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I think it's the best decision for us right now," I replied, feeling the weight of the words as they left my mouth. "I need to find myself again, and I can't do that while I'm constantly reminded of the pain." I'm not saying this is the end, but I need space to figure things out. Emily nodded slowly, the tears spilling over her cheeks. I would never want to hold you back from what you need, but it hurts so much. I don't want to lose you. The pain in her voice tugged at my heartstrings, but I had to remain steadfast in my decision. I know it's hard, but this is what I need. I want us both to have the chance to figure out who we are outside of this relationship. Maybe we can come back from this stronger, but we won't know unless we take the time. Apart, the conversations that followed were difficult, filled with tears, regrets, and the shared memories of a life lived together. We talked about the logistics of separating, finding new living arrangements, dividing our shared possessions, and the emotional toll it would take on both of us. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, preparing to leap into the unknown. In the days that followed, we began to prepare for the separation. I moved into a small apartment nearby, a modest space that felt both alien and comforting. It was a blank slate, a place where I could breathe and think without the constant reminder of our shared life. Once I settled in, I began to immerse myself in activities that grounded me, hiking, reading, and even cooking. I found solace in nature, spending hours exploring trails and enjoying the quiet solitude that came with being alone. Each day brought a new revelation, whether it was discovering a hidden talent for cooking or reconnecting with the friends I had neglected during our marriage. Emily and I agreed to meet regularly, to check in on how we were both doing. These meetings were filled with a mix of awkward silences and heartfelt conversations. I could see the struggle in her eyes as she worked to articulate her feelings, and I felt a pang of sympathy, but I also felt stronger in my resolve. The space was doing us both good, allowing us to reflect on our individual needs and desires. One afternoon, during one of our coffee meetups, Emily looked at me with a vulnerability that struck me hard. "Mark, I've been doing a lot of thinking since we separated. I've realized how much I took for granted. You were my partner, my support, and I didn't appreciate you the way I should have." I nodded, grateful for her honesty. "I think we both have a lot to reflect on. I've learned that I need to prioritize my own well-being, and that's something I neglected for far too long." Over time, we began to share more about our individual journeys. Emily began to explore her own interests, signing up for a painting class and even volunteering at a local charity. I could see a spark in her that had been absent for so long, and while it filled me with hope, I also worried it might be too late for us. As the weeks turned into months, I began to feel a sense of clarity emerging. I had learned so much about myself during this separation, and while my feelings for Emily remained complex, I also realized that I didn't want to rush into a decision about our future. One evening, as I sat on my balcony overlooking the city, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had taken the time to reflect, to heal, and to prioritize myself after the hurt. In that moment, I realized that I had a choice, to either continue to hold on to the past or to embrace the possibilities of the future. As I prepared for our next meetup, I knew the conversation would be pivotal. I sensed we were at a turning point in our journey, one that would either solidify our commitment to each other or help us finally let go. With renewed determination, I entered that meeting with the intention of fully expressing my feelings, ready to face whatever outcome awaited us, together or apart. It was time to lay everything on the table once more. As I walked into the cafe where I had agreed to meet Emily, I felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. We had both come a long way since our separation, and I was ready to lay out everything I had been contemplating. The air buzzed with an electric tension, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting would be a pivotal moment for both of us. Emily arrived a few moments later, her face brightening as she spotted me. She approached with a tentative smile, but I could see the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. We sat down at a small table in the corner, the aroma of coffee wafting around us, grounding me in the moment. "Hey," she started, her voice soft. "I'm glad we're doing this." "Me too," I replied, taking a deep breath. "I've been thinking about us a lot lately, about everything we've been through together." She nodded, her expression serious. "I have too. I've realized how much I took for granted and how I need to change. I want to be better for you and for myself." I appreciated her honesty, but I also wanted to make it clear that words alone wouldn't be enough anymore. "Emily, I want to believe you, but I need to be honest about where I stand. Our separation has been a time for me to reflect, and I've learned a lot about myself. I've realized that I can't just go back to the way things were." "What do you mean?" she asked, her brows furrowing with concern. "I think we both need to acknowledge that while we have love for each other, trust is the foundation of any relationship," I explained. "You broke that trust, and it's not something that can be easily rebuilt. I don't want to rush into anything without knowing if we can both commit to making real changes." She looked down, her hands fidgeting with the coffee cup. "I understand. I don't expect everything to be fixed overnight, but I want to work on it. I'll do whatever it takes." I hesitated for a moment, weighing my options. What if we take it slow? We can work on rebuilding trust without the pressure of rushing back into a relationship. We can still support each other, but let's focus on our individual growth for now. Her eyes lit up, and I could see a spark of hope mixed with a touch of fear. "I'd like that. I don't want to lose you, but I understand that we need to do this the right way. I'm willing to work at it however long it takes." As we talked, we began to lay out what that could look like: a commitment to communication, a willingness to check in with each other, and an understanding that we were both on separate journeys of self-discovery. It felt refreshing to speak candidly about our expectations without the weight of our previous hurt looming over us. Over the following weeks, we would meet regularly, focusing on our own personal growth while also maintaining a connection as friends. I dove deeper into my telehealth project, finding fulfillment in helping others in ways that resonated with my values. Emily continued to embrace her newfound interests, exploring painting and volunteering, which seemed to light up her spirit. Each meeting brought us closer to understanding ourselves, and while the future remained uncertain, I felt a sense of renewed hope. It was as if we were slowly peeling back the layers of hurt, allowing the possibility of something beautiful to emerge from the wreckage. One evening, as we sat on a park bench under the glow of twinkling fairy lights, Emily turned to me. "Mark, I want you to know how much I appreciate you giving me a chance to prove myself. I've learned so much about myself through this process, and it's made me realize how much you mean to me." I smiled, touched by her words. "I appreciate your efforts too. I think we're both learning that love isn't just about the good times, it's also about working through the tough moments. I still care about you, but I also know that we have to take this slowly." As the weeks turned into months, we continued to navigate our newfound friendship with care and intention. While the past still lingered in the corners of our interactions, I felt a sense of healing blossom between us. We were no longer just two people trying to survive a betrayal. We were individuals learning to grow and evolve, whether together or apart. Eventually, we began discussing the possibility of rekindling our relationship. We were both cautious but hopeful, understanding that it would take time and commitment to rebuild what had been lost. It felt liberating to approach it with an open mind, knowing that we were both coming from a place of growth, rather than resentment. As I reflected on my journey through heartbreak and healing, I realized that the experience had changed me in profound ways. I had learned the importance of self-worth, communication, and the value of taking time for oneself. I had also learned that love, while powerful, could be fragile, requiring nurturing to thrive. Whether or not Emily and I would end up together again, I knew one thing for certain: the lessons I had learned would stay with me for a lifetime. In the end, I didn't just find clarity about my relationship. I found clarity about who I wanted to be as a person. As we moved forward, I felt a renewed sense of hope, ready to embrace whatever the future had in store for us, together or apart. The journey was far from over, but I was finally beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel.